All right, so let me tell you a story about Georgetown, Colorado. Now, today, Georgetown is a quiet, pretty little mountain town. Old brick buildings. You got tourists wandering around, eating ice cream, and, riding that awesome historic railroad loop. But in the 1870s, you see, Georgetown was far from being a postcard place. It was a silver and gold war camp sitting high in Clear Creek Canyon, and it was just packed with miners and gamblers, saloons, and you had men who carried revolvers the way that, people today carry cell phones. So this was the heart of the Colorado silver boom. Now, money was pouring out of the mountains, and whenever you have that kind of money showing up, right, the darker side of human nature just rides in right behind it. Now, somewhere in the middle of all of that chaos, you had a man whose name was Robert Schalme. Now, he arrived in Georgetown, and Schalme wasn't exactly known as, a pillar of the community. So the accounts from the time, they describe him as particularly rough, unpredictable, and tied to the sort of disputes that tended to end with, somebody reaching for their pistol. And so sure enough, in 1877, things boiled over. So one night, a fight broke out between Schalme and another man in town. But here's the thing, nobody's completely sure what started the fight. Some accounts say it was gambling, others say it was just an argument that had been just simmering for days between the two men. But like so many fights in mining camps, it escalated fast. A gun came out, shots were fired, and the smoke cleared. You had a man laying there dead. Now, in a bigger city, that might have led to a long investigation, witnesses, lawyers, months of courtroom drama. But this was Georgetown in the 1870s. Come on, guys, justice moved much faster. So Schalme was arrested, and then he was thrown into the Georgetown jail. And then this was just a rough little stone building that just sat right in town. And that is where this real story actually begins. Because the miners in Georgetown, they weren't exactly known for patience. Word spread, through the saloons that they had a killer who was sitting comfortably in jail, eating meals, waiting for a trial that might take months. And so now the town itself started to boil. And you just have to imagine that atmosphere, okay? So outside the jail, you had men who worked underground all day long with blasting powder and steel drills. Men who had watched friends die in mine collapses. Men who believed in a very simple frontier rule. If someone takes a life, they got to pay for it. Well, pretty soon you had a crowd that started gathering, and first it was just a few men. Well, then it was a few dozen men. Lanterns just swinging in the mountain wind, boots grinding the dirt, and voices getting louder. Well, inside the jail, I'm pretty sure Schalme probably knew exactly what was coming for him, because by that point in the American West, everyone knew how these things sometimes ended. Okay, well, there we are. The moment arrives. The crowd surges forward. The jail door, it did not hold very long. Now, mining camps were full of men who knew exactly how to break rock, wood, or anything else that stood in their way. So they get in and they drag Schalme out into the cold night air. There's no courtroom. There's no judge. just a rope. Now, if you stand in Georgetown today and you look around, it's hard to picture the scene. But in the 1870s, that kind of frontier justice, it wasn't unusual, okay? Mining towns ran on a very strange mix of law and just raw human instinct. And that night, well, the crowd decided the law was just moving way too slow. So the rope went up. And by morning, Robert Schalme was dead. Just like that. Case closed. Now here's the strange thing about stories like this one. They weren't rare in the mining camps, okay? You know, gold and silver districts brought huge amounts of money into tiny mountain valleys, just almost overnight. Thousands of people just flooding in. And the law, the real law, most of the time often struggled to just even keep up. So you had towns like Georgetown who lived in this strange gray zone between civilization and something much older. You know, a place where a jail cell might protect you, or it might just hold you long enough for the crowd to gather outside. And if you walk Georgetown today, you can still feel that history just under the surface. You know, the beautiful Victorian buildings, the quiet mountain air. But buried in that peaceful little town is the memory of a night when a gold camp decided to take justice into its own hands. And that's the thing about Colorado's mining history. It isn't just stories about gold. It's stories about people pushed to the edge by the mountains, by money, and by each other. So if you guys enjoy these deep dives into the wild history of Colorado's mining districts, well, make sure that you guys subscribe, okay? So hit like so more people who love frontier history can find this channel, and turn on your notifications so that you just, you don't miss the next episode. And if you've ever visited Georgetown, okay, or, explored any old mining town where the air just feels a little heavier than it should, you guys drop that stuff in the comments down below, because, well, as we know, the deeper you dig into the Rockies, well, the more the stories just keep coming out of the ground. All right, see y'all next time.